So she said, right now, she said, let's send it out, just regular mail. And she said, we actually have found people, they send all the innkeeper's tax forms regular mail. And she said, we have very few people who do not get those. And so she said, let's just follow up.
Yeah, one way to track that is to keep the actual list of people who are represented. She'll keep that. Here's the list.
You can't see anything with this up here, sorry.
And then I talked to Susan Beavers and gave her the contact at the State Board of Accounts to send everything to, just simply because the State Board of Accounts has to send the information out to the OTAs in order to get that implemented. According to the Indiana Tourism Association, that can take up to 60 days for that to be fully termed out. So there could be some slippage of where, that the tax is remitted by the OTAs to the state, and some of it could be at 5%, some of it could be at 8%. There could be some slippage in there until all of that is implemented. And then also too, the council has also started moving forward to have the state collect 100% of the innkeeper's tax and not have it go manually through the treasurer's office. So enforcement of that would be all through the state, which
The state pays it out once a year, so innkeepers, or once a year, once a month. No, the innkeeper has to pay to the state by the 20th of the month, the following month collection. So collection July, they pay by August 20th. And by around September, then September 3rd, 4th, 5th, somewhere in that area of the state will just transfer the money to the county.
And then you also said enforcement is a lot better as well.
There's great enforcement at the state level because they're looking at that. And people probably are more honest with what they're paying because they're also paying state sales tax online. And that is all monitored by the state. So as they're paying their innkeepers, it just makes sense to pay it online through the state. There's some argument from the county treasurer that the county's going to lose some interest on on that money because, sometimes at the end of a particular month, somebody immediately writes their check and pays to the innkeeper, to the treasurer, the third or fourth day of the month instead of until the 20th. So there is going to be some lag and some interest, but I think overall, to me, it's going to be a much better deal. And I think we're going to see collections come in better to the state.
During the course of the community feedback as well, there was strong interest in in a lot of the things that we've talked about already: trails, beautification, events, fairgrounds, youth, and senior priorities as well. I put together a spreadsheet based upon all of our past meetings, which shows that the list of projects that we have all talked about, the cost associated with them, and any kind of notes that we took in accordance with that. And this can be a living, breathing document that we go in and change, that we go in and do. I'm sorry, I don't have a dry erase board.
No, that's all right. I was just trying to see if we should come with this list. Well, and you guys, they have it. Yeah. Here. See that?
They don't. There is, I already think, right in this planning commission.
I think it will be that.
Okay, I mean, it costs money, right? It's coming right out of Kayla's budget.
I'm getting, yeah, we could.
So this will be a living, breathing document as we continue to move forward for a list of projects and things, like I said, that we've all talked about. Now, moving forward, what? Yes.
I think there are, no fault of yours, but I think there are probably things that we have talked about that have not made it onto the list.
Okay, and we can add
just
those.
things like there's interest, and the problem is they're not, I don't think, specific projects, and that's why they're not on here. Is they're more like infrastructure related. They're kind of a more like target areas of investment where we know there is need, but we haven't narrowed what the project is. And so, just as a kind of a disclaimer there.
But
it's a good idea to have those even as a placeholder and add info. Otherwise, as we're deciding things, those get left out of the decision.
Yeah,
So
so
prioritization.
well, yeah, to get the, as a specific example, the coverage. Bean Blossom Covered Bridge, is that, maybe we're missing it.
Is the Bean Blossom Overlook improvements?
overlook.
No, this is in addition to that, that's a separate.
Oh, it is, okay.
It's the covered bridge. Oh,
Oh.
sorry.
And I don't,
That's for the
Overlook
covered
improvement.
yes,
Gotcha.
yes, and I don't know if there was any, I don't know if there was any specific, when we started talking, I think specifically we just started talking about the shelter and not necessarily the covered bridge upkeep, and I don't know if there was a dollar amount ever really assigned
Let's be.
to that.
I think I'm reading this, Bean Blossom Overlook.
I thought that was a shelter
Yeah.
for the overlook.
It's the
That's not the
overlook,
bridge.
not the separate site.
So not the separate bridge, and I don't think that there was ever maybe a price tag put on that.
I mean, I would throw 100,000 on it, but Kevin, I know, is digging on it. But let's just at least get those things that we do know on that list, so because we've got to start, and maybe this is the new master, and we start piling.
Yes, I think-
into it, right?
I think that is, yes, I think that's what we need to do.
There's also housing, workforce housing, that is an issue that we talk about. We probably just slap it on the list as just car lot holder. It's really not, it's a priority, but, so housing, covered bridge.
Well, I think housing can go right into what we're really gonna talk about next, which is, do we really, the quality of life commission, committee, and economic development corporation, et cetera, et cetera. But yes.
Pump track.
Pump track.
Which you got from Kevin. So I'll update real quick.
We did at our last CBC meeting, go ahead and approve an addition, up to additional $80,000 to complete the pump track. They have raised in different forms about $120,000. The project is a $200,000 project, and contractors are ready to get started on this soon. And so we went ahead and approved $80,000 to help get that awesome project completed.
Thank you.
I've also, and while we're on that, because at the same location, we're talking about pickleball courts, and I've talked to Danny Key, and he's getting final numbers for what it will take to add 2 more courts and proper lighting for the pickleball courts.
We as
Those there at the state park.
No, those
Deer
are.
run. Oh, deer run all this time. Well,
Yeah, that's place Laura, he previously told me 7 months ago. 25.
Right, and he was gonna get a firm number, because they're ready to start, and I
Yeah.
talked to Mark Shields also, and the only thing they'll have to do is update their DNR permit, because that's where it's located.
Sure.
They might be pushing
Yeah.
that space, so they'll have to,
Now, is that gonna affect anything that the commissioners have already done? Because I know that you guys have had a lot of
it will.
discussions and things on that already, and votes.
It will affect the memorandum of understanding because it's currently written with 6 forms, not 8.
Easy change.
So you just have to change.
Yeah.
You just have an addendum.
So Brian, this is very helpful to help our memories. One thing I'd suggest adding is a status column to capture things like what Kevin just said.
Where are we at in it?
Partially funded, fully funded, for example, the Overlook, the foundation did a grant a month or so ago to partially fund the shelter, not fully fund.
Oh, okay.
So the other thing, going back on the pump track, so Mark Shields has already come and he's taking the pickleball MOU and MOA and modifying those for that particular project. So that's in the works as well. So it's hopefully for the commissioners before too long.
Can I ask a quick question? Just, and I'm the only one. What date did you send that document? Just so I can
this one?
find it on my phone, yes.
I don't know if, I don't think,
can't seem to find my email.
The problem-
Any of that in it.
the problem is I thought this meeting was tomorrow and not today, and so I didn't send any of it out.
So how did everybody get those lists?
Brian.
I just made copies when I got here.
Dave
Okay,
and I are both like, and Darren were like,
can we
Where's
get
the
some more
email?
copies?
Where's the email?
Here.
We have-
Just take some notes.
Yeah, hold on.
I was gonna say,
well, there might be
Here's,
some in
here's
the
the whole
middle of
set.
Is this-
Just-
There were, but I think. they're
Okay.
not.
He's got, she just makes.
Yeah, can you make like-
Talking all three of us. Where is the email?
I'm purposely keeping you in the dark, Patty.
All three of us.
you know, well, it's my, it's.
To drive you to the table.
It's the mushroom.
I'm not saying nice things about you. Anyway.
Probably shouldn't.
You're dead to her.
The other thing I would add to this, is we've talked a lot about how to target expenses that are current county tax, property tax related expenses that can be offset. It can be offset in order to free up money for public safety. And so there's kind of a section here of, and that's almost not a special project, it's more of just like a
Yes,
ongoing.
I would agree with you 100%, is that we have, like, I mean, these projects are all well and good, but these projects are outside the norms of what you have in your general fund. So I think that ultimately, we've got to just, I mean, at some point, we've got to start thinking about what part of the budgets are going in there and et cetera, et cetera.
250, I mean, I know we need a lot more than that for the public safety issue overall, but he had mentioned that, just kind of general, I think everyone heard that. So I mean, I think you're gonna put a number on that, it would be somewhere close to that for Parks and Rec, Purdue Extension, County Fairgrounds, Pioneer Village, Covered Bridge, other ongoing.
These are things, these are lines in your budget that you have
That's
every
what-
year.
Those five
Yeah.
kind of that we think we could draw from for tourism related things to hopefully fill the public safety.
So-
Since we're gonna have both categories, right? We'll have new projects under recreation, but we'll have budget leaving under recreation. I would reuse the category column and just say community rec dash VR for budget relieving or
There you go.
something, or community rec dash new, or, you know, just use a dash extension in that same column so we can, and then you can sort by, as soon as it's Excel or something, you can sort, right?
So can the council's finance committee start working on, you know, specific lines, since you're getting into budget season anyway, to say, so that we can get some kind of firm number to do that? Huh?
When you say firm number, what are you looking for? What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if you want to get
What
it,
it's currently costing us and what you're gonna replace it with?
yes, yeah, exactly.
Our current
Yeah.
budget lines,
So we have to go with it.
our current budget lines.
Yeah, right.
Is that something we can delve into on a Thursday?
And just on those lines, I mean, Brian, we're just destroying your agenda here, I realize. It's just,
I'm gonna keep you moving.
oh, man.
But these are important things to talk about, but we are gonna talk about the EDC today, so get comfy if we don't make it there. Scott,
Can you really find relieve some of their issues there? Because that's, we're getting ready to meet with and start
we're
figuring
trying out
out.
the water, you're about to
They also-
see.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So what do we do on that? Let's
Sure,
talk about that. And John, help us here. We've got
Okay.
unknown target project areas.
Thank you.
And you mentioned placeholders on here, you know, and then there's gotta be a group that, you know, makes them known. Those projects need to become from unknown to known, you know.
Well, I think if we have just a couple of pieces, we still put a line on there as placeholder, as we know the information we fill it in, but I would just take those 4 areas, because 4 you said that are budget relieving, and just put that on there. Parks and Rec dash budget
Let's
relieving.
skip gears here. Those were budget relieving, and I think he skipped over to like infrastructure, like Nalvin Sewer. So if we had Nalvin Sewer on here, we don't know what
That's
it
maybe a
is.
5th category of
Well,
budget relieving.
Like infrastructure that's in that.
I think before you ever get to Gnawbone Sewer, number one, so the commissioners have identified Gnawbone and Bean Blossom as areas that could support new housing, correct?
That's what's being done with the 2 sewer districts right now.
Okay, so you gotta start there, and then the housing, and then in order to have housing, you've gotta upgrade the wastewater. I think those are better steps, yes, to
The
follow.
Blossom Helmsburg project is fully well funded and ready to roll.
It is,
I
by
don't
the
think we
state,
need
yeah.
any of this. Navone, we're initial talks with them, and they're gonna need money.
Okay.
They're gonna need funding, and I think they're operating on half of their plant, so they really need enough funds to get the other half brought up to date, new, modernized, and ready to roll. It's like, well, they're in
Are
there.
there any grants available for that? Has anybody
Probably.
looked?
Probably, but again, we're in initial talks and they don't have the manpower to research that, and we do. So we're gonna try to join forces here
Okay. So
and
you're
use our manpower to help the.
Hopefully
so you're just in
ARA
the initial stages
access.
of that.
Yeah, we're gonna be meeting in the next day. The next meeting. will be-
But you know, when we talk about grants and things like that, that really goes into an economic development corporation where you have an entity that has a grant writer or somebody that can access these funds that are available at the state or federal level. And I mean, we've got to get there.
Yes.
So that we can access these funds, because there's a lot of things that we're just sitting here saying, oh, we can just, you know, oh, it's in, oh, we can just do that. Well, we may not need to do that because we can get funds from other entities. We just got to have a person parked in place that's able to do that.
Exactly.
If I can use our EDC to do that, that would be
Yes.
fantastic.
Absolutely.
'Cause that will open
So
up-
I mean, if you want to call it a quality of life corporation or an economic development corporation, you're just parsing words, but it's the same thing.
That's a project, right? It should be listed here.
Yes, the
Let's list it as
EDC.
its own project, and I would just caution against, and I think Gary and I have talked about this, like taking tax money outside of the public oversight realm and putting it anywhere else, right?
Yes.
It reduces the oversight and the public kind of responsibility to just oversee. So let's just put it as a project and not let it dominate everything we do, right? Because we don't know who these people are.
Well, I know that
what it is,
you
right? So-
personally have talked about with an economic development corporation that it's a pay to play moreover than anything.
Usually,
But at
yeah.
some point, like, we've got to get money from somewhere in order to get the thing started.
Exactly. The district, the region is another way for us to do that, and it front loads a study for the region and an economic development strategy, which would include a corporation potentially, if our participants wanted to go that route in those interviews and set the study. So there is a avenue there. I will tell you.
But wouldn't it be good if we existed within an economic development district to have a representative to be able to participate with that? You know, especially with,
We'll have like 5 representatives on that type of regional group, right? So as a county are individually equally represented with the other 2 counties. So we'll have that, but so I guess let's add that economic development, that's a key one, right? That corporation or whatever it is to our project list, because that's really what it is at this point. It could become something bigger.
It's formation and funding of an EDC
There you go.
function.
Yeah.
I would call it a function until you define what it looks like.
And it's almost the same as the region, like you could almost put the region in the same.
And there again, even if it's an economic development corporation, it's a pay to play, the county is gonna be paying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, so we're gonna be,
Government pays the most usually.
right, so we're gonna be partners in that for sure, so it's.
Yeah.
We don't want to design it to fit the 3 county collaboration because you want it to also fit ROI, partnerships and other things, right? So
And our own county priorities.
I think it's just 100% around county focused. 100%. Yeah.
But we need to be able, whatever this is, EDC is really where I think there's a lot of the potential with, but we need to get it done.
Yeah.
Just need to get it done.
Every county around us has it.
We need it.
They're using it for decades.
That was brought up to me on this Uplands project by the Rural Opportunities Initiative, the ROI representative. She said there is state money for some of the things I was talking about, this group in relation to this Uplands group. This is, for those of you who are not familiar, Eli Lilly gave the state $267 million, and it's divided up in 11 regions. And we are in the Uplands region, and there are 11 counties in each region. And the money is kind of broken up into 2 chunks. One is for sort of capital projects, infrastructure, and the other is arts and culture. And so I'm on a steering committee for our region to try to pull together counties and create what they're calling culture clusters. But one of the things that was there's a consulting firm that analyzed every county, what their county plans were, what their town plans were, what their population is, what their tax base, their demographics. It got a 41-page report, which I actually sent to Kevin and Brian. But in there is how this money can be broken down for grants. But the fact that we don't have an economic development commission, they have no one to contact. Like that, they need an official body that they can hang their hat on. And then when you do a grant or you make a grant request, that you have this qualification to do it. In the Lilly money under the infrastructure are restoration of historic buildings, the Pioneer Village. There's in the arts and culture money, there is programming funding.
When you say it is, you mean it's eligible?
It's eligible. Yeah, it's eligible. It could be the Steamery. That's an older building that's being restored. There's, so the better organized you are to accept this money and the more professionally are in making grants and forming partnerships. It's like for the Pioneer Village, it's potentially the Historical Society and the Quality of Life could write the grant with, matching funds. So they get so much and then we match. There's partnerships, and then they also talked about like sidewalk projects. She said there's state money outside of this to do those kinds of projects, but I have no one to send that information to because you don't have an ED.
Well, that's kind of not true, but yeah, and frustrating to hear that they don't think they can communicate with our county because we don't have a specific nonprofit external organization that that doesn't add up to me.
It's just that she said.
Right here,
I know, but she doesn't know that. All the other counties have one. That's her point.
we're different.
And then this, sometimes being different is no
If we
good.
don't have the
Right.
title and rule definition they're looking for, then they really don't know who sent it to
We've
them.
used the Brown County Regional Sewer District has received a couple $100,000 of ROI money, and it's Clint Studebaker himself, but as a personal contact.
Let's do this, let's put that in terms, we've got a champion for each, and maybe that's why we add a champion for each of these column, and then a partner grant match column for not just this project, but every one, like she said, we're known grant partners for each of these projects for certain types of things, so we can add a partner grant match leverage column, and then this is gonna get complicated, right?
Okay.
So are you
Multi-year,
opposed to forming an EDC?
No, I'm absolutely not. I think it was my idea to form one, maybe. and
Okay.
I fully support it.
Can
And
we
we have
do that?
funding to actually do that, so no.
Okay.
Another question about the ADCP ROI, do they care if it's corporation or commission yet?
I don't know.
I think they just want to contact.
They just want
I just want a
to-
human being, I agree.
Here's where we get the tail wagging.
Alice
I don't
gets a
care
lot of this
what
for
someone else
someone
wants
else.
for us to
Right.
do. We have to do what's best for us.
Right.
Yeah,
We're not
but
gonna be
but
steered by.
as a person who writes a lot of grants,
No, I get it.
you
I get
you
it.
need a tag on there that,
Yeah.
it meets this. And and this whole project, this Lilly money is under the IDEC that Ron just totally fired the
Yeah.
whole bunch and replaced it with a whole new board. But a lot of them now are rural. The concern was all this money would go to Marion County in Northwest Indiana. Now there are members on this board that may be a little more rural county oriented. So, there's kind of an opportunity here. So I think we want to have the structure in place that we can.
All 11 of those communities have the same issues, right? I was at the meeting.
Absolutely,
Everybody has the
absolutely.
same, everybody
They
has the
do.
same problem.
They
So
do.
who puts together the best plan is the one that's going
This
to
is
speak
the-
out.
exactly.
That's right.
I've gone to in-person meetings with this, and here's Davies County and another one sitting on a Zoom call, and they don't say a word,
I just don't think it can be a volunteer,
No, I think we need
You
to.
have to.
need a-
But
I think we need to appoint someone.
not unless you have to, right? It does save us a lot of money. Okay, trying to get you back on track here, Brian. We've got several project lists to add, projects to add to the list. The EDC, we talked about adding that, Salt Creek Trail, county fairgrounds, capital and operational investments, which includes Sycamore Senior Center, So Salt Creek Trail, County Fairgrounds, Gnawbone, sewer, Sycamore Senior Center. I throw 4-H in there all day long. Just kind of fair related. We got the coverage, and then just infrastructure in general captures all the other stuff, right?
If we put Sycamore, we should put Hickory Ridge.
Yeah, if that's a county-owned facility or.
Same.
It's a private,
Is that
it's a
private?
nonprofit.
Is it a nonprofit? Yeah, I mean, so if they need something,
They're
you
nonprofit,
know,
right.
I think they ask, I wouldn't put it on a list until they.
How is that,
How's
tourism related?
And that's the other question, right? Now, talking senior center, Lynn gave a good example on the fairgrounds, which is, kind of brings it closer to home where they've held, you know, some play art, you know, social, you know, some social work there through the arts.
Well, in the senior center,
And the senior center on the fairground. So I'm just throwing these out here, and the senior center may be a light one to not put on there, but it's
Instead of calling out itemizing senior center 4-H, just
fairgrounds.
total fairgrounds.
Fairgrounds,
Just
yeah.
a complete umbrella of fairgrounds.
We can break that down later as needed.
Yeah, we account.
And then in that is capital and operational tax expenses. So it's gonna get more.
But that really comes down to your budget lines.
Yeah. Yes. And Kevin, I know you're hearing from department heads, I know you're working on like 20-year plans for investment. And so Parks and Rec, you know, we should see a hopefully 20-year plan, so we can budget out 20 years with inflation, et cetera. What other projects are we missing here that we know are, we've talked about in the report, and we should make sure we capture? Anything else?
When the health needs assessment is done, that may lead to some new things being identified, but it's not completely done.
Yeah, we talked about before the value of the splash pad.
Oh, yeah, we did.
oh, yeah.
Did we vet it? This list's almost like a vetted kind of thing. Did we vet that?
A splash pad could easily be used for tourism. You just have to have a nonprofit to spearhead it.
Right.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's
Parks
true.
and Rec, yeah.
And then where are you gonna put it at?
They've got 80 acres, but anybody against splash pad being
No.
under consideration?
I think we should.
people go to Franklin and all those
Yeah.
places?
Oh, yeah.
I think that is a great.
I mean, that
When Indy Parks added those in place of aging pools, they saw dramatic increases in park usage numbers.
It's free, right? Essentially.
Well, it was free before.
That was free before.
And that's an asset that's family driven, so I mean, that's gonna just be something.
Splash pad it is.
Yes.
So again, it doesn't
So
have to
one-
be free either.
Before we leave this list, one thing I just want to say, because somebody made a comment earlier about new housing formation with sewer and so on, but we need to be careful we're not labeling things as a primary purpose for full-time residents only. We need to be able to honestly say in a straight face that it is supportive of the tourism.
Yeah, we need workers.
So when both are true, I think we need to be able to say we're focusing on the tourism part of that activity.
Which is workforce, in terms of workforce, housing, I'm sure we got that.
And that's the CBC, before they give out any money, you guys have to vet it and make sure
Well,
it's for tourism.
we do, but it has to be vetted before it gets to us.
Yeah.
You know, we can't be the ones,
Before you vote, we were letting our turn, you know, or you can vote and then the council can deny.
Right.
Well, if it's you need then our attorney can
So-
figure it out.
So I have a question with regards to Greg here. I'm the guy that likes to put the meat on the bone.
Yeah.
Well, who's going to put forth the effort to put processes and policies and procedures in place to define how this is all working?
I think it's great that you said that, Kevin, because the next item on our agenda is the site structure. So we have talked.
Brian, I'm glad you gave me the meat.
Thank you. So we talked a lot at the previous meetings about, we talked about the EDC, we've talked about the quality of life commission. So I guess we just need to, let's just get into this. So do we want to pursue a 501c3 nonprofit in order to be an oversight piece of it, to be the one who approves or vets it before it goes to the CBC, to be the stakeholder and the keeper of the projects? Like, what do we, I mean, do you want a separate commission that does that? Does it need to be an economic development corporation?
Let's back up a second. Okay. Those are all, I think, just key questions. I think in terms of this group, what we're doing today, you know, we are not the EDC. We are not members of that. We are not, I'm kind of, and John, you do this a lot. I'm trying to kind of back us away from getting involvement in a project that we fund almost, that doesn't exist yet, right? And that would take broad, I think we, at a minimum, I think we should be asking for an application for those types of activities, right? As an outside firm, which we are. No one is the EDC, right? It doesn't exist. And so, and I don't think we want to become it. I mean, I could be wrong. We could go that route and say, hey, we're going to morph into the EDC. It's possible. But right now, we are public overseers of these tax funds. We don't make any decisions. We only make recommendations to people who have been appointed and voted to oversee these tax funds. And so right now, it seems like we want to, as a group, wholeheartedly encourage that project. The problem is there's no one there to like do it. I mean, we are the ones interested. So I've kind of, but we also have to be very fair about the use of the funds. So you see where I'm like little.
In my opinion, the oversight already exists within the state statute.
Yes.
The CBC is, you know, and then you allocate the budget. So I don't know if you need another organization to do the same thing that's already being done. It seems redundant to me. So that's my opinion. In my opinion, you don't need another nonprofit agency that oversees how the additional 3% is spent, because the oversight already exists within the state statute.
CBC council.
CBC and the, yes.
Yeah.
Because because the state statute says it has to go to a nonprofit, and then your budget goes before the council and you, anyways. So ultimately, that's my opinion.
I think that's true, right? It doesn't need anything, right?
So yeah, you don't need another organization to do that. But to Kevin's point, to Lynn's point, at some point there has to be a person within an office, and if there's room available at the community foundation building, they can share. To where, and then, or the CVB as well, to where you can be that point of contact and field all of this information, and then
EDC.
what, on an EDC, yes.
Are we distinguishing, we're talking EDC or?
I'm talking about an EDC.
Okay,
That's
EDC,
where,
gotcha.
that's where I'm at. And like I said, this is purely my opinion.
Yeah.
You don't need a quality of life commission.
To oversee the ongoing innkeeper's tax.
Correct.
I agree with that. That kind of.
I think continuing the role of this group or
It's
some
an
iteration of
advisory.
it for a transitional
Yeah.
design build stage to get to a fully functioning role definition, clarity, sort of EDC. So it's a temporary.
Yeah.
The ongoing
Yeah.
would be.
I know we don't want to use public money to fund an EDC.
Oh, that's okay.
And-
I think that's okay.
But I think that in order to get it started, I mean, I think that whatever that looks like, I think that, it has to happen.
Don't we not still have an economic development board?
Nope.
Is it? Okay.
There's an RDC.
And the redevelopment commission is not, in my experience, a group that steers the county's economic development strategy. It's a reactive TIF,
Yes.
heavily TIF focused group that is empowered with that activity. And, and so
That's the role, exactly
that's
right.
the role.
Very limited scope of TIF. Now, when you have the RDC and the EDC, together they can do some great things working together, but they each have their roles. The Economic Development Corporation can't do TIF, but together they can accomplish a lot more with the support of local government.
So Brian, I agree that Well, one thing we know is we need, I think we're still getting so close to this EDC that it worries me a little bit that but I think we need a
So what,
I think it
what do you?
What are you worried, yeah.
What are you worried about?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't want I don't know, we can decide later whether the CDC and the council are comfortable with, and I think we would be continuing this quality of life to make recommendations to you on certain.
Well, that's what I'm saying, we have to, a group like this needs to stay involved.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Brian, do you agree with that?
Yes, yes, and I think if we were to take a vote, and I'm sorry, no, I would be outvoted instantly, because all of you do want oversight in some
We do.
capacity.
Yeah.
So I think that with an economic development corporation, you can have a board of directors, just it would function exactly like the CVB does with oversight of the visitor center in those regards. So, those contracts, especially if you're the agency that primarily gives the money to them, it would be, it would be no different than the contract that exists now between the CVC and the CVB, but there's a board of directors that, oversees the vision of it
Just to
all.
be clear,
What's everybody's thought on this group becoming that? Because I
That
am
board.
impressed,
more of it, yeah.
I am impressed with the makeup of this group, everybody who's here.
I agree. I don't want to lose me. If you just make it economic development, I'm seeing that it's just business and
I
it's just in the
know,
arts
I
gets
know.
pitched and,
Yeah.
I want, this board, they're,
Quality of life.
but I think you need to call it an EDC, but I think it has some board of directors that it's dictated that all of these elements are represented.
Well, it represents actual business in Brown County.
And nonprofits.
It's
And all kinds of, there are many aspects of Brown County at this table. I don't want to lose.
Please call on it. Well,
Kevin,
Playing by the rules.
I thought maybe you had a problem with your hand.
No,
he's stretching it, getting the blood flow going.
So okay, so just from my experience in the years of project management, this is a project. I see two things that are necessary in order for us to move forward and accomplish and be successful. There needs to be a temporary solution, because now we're collecting the 3%, and we basically want to put those dollars into action. So there needs to be a temporary framework structured around, I agree, with the CDC in concert with the council. That's what I see, right? And that can then lead to giving us the framework as to what we want to do for longer term planning. Right now, we as a county, and I'm going to lump me in there, we don't know the first thing about long-term planning, okay?
You're right.
We have absolutely no view, vision, scope, resources, direction, okay?
Looks like
So-
it's too short there.
Well, I'm getting ready to add the icing to the cake. But you have commissioners that are in place, you have council in place that are looking for it. So I think what needs to happen and come forth from that is, let's take and focus on what we want to do over the next 12, 18, 24 months. That's what I consider short term. Put a structure in place, structured through the CDC with either a grant framework or some kind of definition around the clarity of we are going to allocate and put a process in place to permanently allocate towards those particular projects that we have on that list there, funding going forward, then that will give us visibility and insight into shortfalls, challenges, direction that we need to go.
We have until September to come up with this framework.
So I think in the meantime, you have to set the.
that's when
The council's goal is October.
So that's a very short-term thing.
So I'm missing something. Goal for what?
The goal for how this is all gonna work with the additional funding.
Ordinance to control.
Funding allocations. process.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you need to do an ordinance, but a memorandum of understanding between the council and the CVC.
Yeah, we were talking about that, that's right. Finalizing those details of investment.
Yeah. And so just that there's a concern with, I hear conversation, well, we need a body, right? So that means a body in the sense of someone to do outreach to, like a key point of contact with other opportunities. That's something that comes along, but can that not come forth from and again, I don't know what I'm not an expert. I'm 6 months in the job, okay? So the question becomes is there not a way to basically bring forth a board under the CVC that's specifically targeted to follow and operate within these 4 categories, and it be representative of like we do with the CVC board today? Except maybe it needs to be, contain a commissioner, a council, or whatever.
I think that's what this is, so I think we're there now with this, but here's, I keep coming, this is a good group. I mean, this is a good group to make these decisions widely. We could be a little bit more broadly represented in schools. I'm glad someone from the town is here.
And Amy could not be here.
And Amy could not be here, and so, but yeah, we've got a little bit broader representation, including of businesses. But I think this is a really good group.
But to reinforce Kevin, I think very clear role definitions need to be a priority. What this entity does, what the new revolving group does.
Well,
things will just
remember,
not be done by anybody.
That's right.
the money can
And there's
only
a
be
difference
allocated
between
to a
a full-time
nonprofit.
person who wakes up thinking about it and they meet once a month or so many weeks, right? I mean, we're coming and going. We're not waking up every day, so we need to get to somebody whose role is defined as.
Well, even if this group takes on the job of, kind of watching this future, watching it grow, helping it develop and everything, at some point, there's still gonna have to be somebody that answers those calls, manages the grants, oversees the contracts of the work getting done. And who at this table has time to do that every day?
That's my point.
There's gotta be somebody that's gonna be able to do that.
Well, let's do this, because I wish we had a whiteboard, because I think we can get through this. So there's money from the innkeeper's tax. It goes to a nonprofit, which is not us. It goes somewhere else, to some other organization. That organization needs to be sustainable, needs to be able to manage those funds, needs to be able to upkeep that investment and maintain it. And so we are kind of in a way, that's a pretty efficient way. I mean, we aren't doing any of this stuff. Well, a couple folks could end up receiving funding and implementing, but this group, all we do is kind of like the foundation role. By the way, this is like let's just take 1 second and celebrate what just happened to our county. Basically, it just created a second foundation. I mean, the foundation's been around millions of years. This is a new, separate, no strings attached, on top of the foundation. It's like a second incredible foundation that's just been created here. It's not enough. So, I mean, I think we understand this, but so what we're doing is we're giving that money out to other entities. It's not us that has to manage all that. So it could be a pretty slim, it could be a slim, John.
It takes more time than I think.
Okay.
If you want to do it responsibly, you've got clear guidelines, you follow it takes more time than you think. I don't disagree with what you just said.
I
but
agree.
There's still gotta be an administrator or something.
Stephanie.
Okay, so I have a question, and
I thought she was the administrator.
I don't understand, why can't we just go ahead and post it what we're looking for? Someone to head this up, because I feel like we have to, or someone to fill that role. If anyone is interested, submit an application, because I feel like you have to have a point person on these things. It's like having a business with no manager. It's like, okay.
So I got a question. You started out with, covered under the statutes, the umbrella statutes, go through the CVC, they give money to a nonprofit CVB. We're going to create another entity. We're going to make an EDC possibly. That could fill in part of this picture. You have a model of a community foundation that will distribute grant money. So what can we build out of that? What do we What do we need? We've got the CVC and the CVB. Do we need then an EDC and another entity that's similar to that? Just the EDC?
Just the EDC.
I think the EDC is on, I mean, my God, I mean, at minimum, that EDC is on its own. Like, they're a separate nonprofit. This group has nothing.
I agree.
Make be a member of it, but they are on their own.
Well, I think this group becomes a board that oversees the EDC.
Advisory board.
Similar this, and that it's just exactly like so the CVB is a board that oversees the operations and the vision of the visitors of tourism, basically.
And that's good because upstream from that, you got the council that oversees the CVC and you guys. To see where the money's going, flowing through, and then you guys.
Yes, and then it's no different than, once a month, you have a report to the board of here's the money flow for the visitor's operation. Here's where we're at with these particular projects. Here's where we're at with advertising. Here's where we're at, it's a monthly report that goes to the board, but ultimately the board votes on the vision of group marketing, of website development, of content, of like whatever. I'm just using the CVB as an example, but the EDC would be no different. The EDC's primary focus would be these particular buckets. They would vet the information that would go to the CVC. I mean, they could do that, or that would come before this board to be able to do that, to vet it, to say, is this the right project that we want to do? Does this help the ultimate vision of the town or the county's comprehensive plans, et cetera, et cetera?
We are that board, and we kind of, yeah.
I think,
so as far as the EDC
because the EDC, I want the EDC to answer to somebody. I don't want a completely independent and autonomous EDC that decides to take Brown County in a completely different direction. Well, that's why this is a very good oversight board for that.
Okay,
Because
so
we have so many types of interests in this
We've worked
county
very hard.
right now.
Or the EDC, instead of forming another board, the EDC then just goes squarely to the CVC, because that is a organization appointed by the council and the commissioners anyway.
well, so technically you had an RDC, which you could substitute an EDC, but I don't think you're not talking about.
You need both.
Organization.
Both. Separate.
Right, and then you have the RDC, I'm just using that as a model. The RDC would not fit the model you just described, as far as I can see.
All right, let me jump in here, because I think we're talking, I think
Being that if we set EDC up in that model, it would not hit.
you got too
Okay, hang
much focus on this EDC guy.
Did you need to say
Realistically, we're talking about $1 million a year, and the CDC thinks like 30,000 of it. Okay, yes, there's a big return, but I think we're placing too much importance on it, and maybe too focused. I mean, yes, it's critical, but it's one of hopefully what is dozens of nonprofits that receive this funding, millions of dollars. So let's try not
That's what the
to.
EDC does.
Right.
It manages all, it all flows through that EDC.
Pam has something to
You
say
don't think
back
it should
here.
what?
I don't think the EDC should manage this money or both.
No, I'm not saying that they should manage the money.
He's gonna still manage it.
The CDC and the county still manage. So I
Obviously,
think there's a
yes.
little bit of confusion. I think if we had a whiteboard or I think we need to kind of chart this out, because I'm not sure I understand what an EDC does ultimately either, and I've got a good grip on that. Let me tell you, it's not what we're doing here typically, right? They don't give out millions of dollars like a foundation. That's not what an EDC does, ever, hardly.
Okay, Pam has something to say.
Are we still talking about 3 basic buckets for this additional 3%? One being the Parks and Rec,
Yeah,
county.
Infrastructure, quality of life.
And then
Nothing's changed.
infrastructure, basically EDC.
Yeah.
And then quality of life programming. Are we still talking about
Nothing's changed.
those 3 things, all right?
I think it's 3 or 4, actually. I think it's 4. But yeah, it's the same as we've always been talking.
Pam, what we're really trying to get at is what role does this play in it? And then do we who's a point of contact for grants and trying to chart out how the money is best to be spent?
So the.
Oh, Colin.
I apologize for being late. I got delayed with intense conversation. My thought was that we could have a quality of life commission, kind of like this CVB board that would either receive all of the additional funds and then allocate it, and that one of those allocations, say 12.5, which is 1/8 of the total, would go, there'd be an MOU and memorandum of understanding that would take that 12.5% and fund it directly to the EDC. Either that commission would fund the EDC or the CBC would fund an EDC directly, but that there would be a separate commission that would manage the offsetting of the county budget and then also facilitate the programming piece of it. But the EDC would have its own board, its own bylaws, standards, and agreements about who should be on that board and how it's supposed to function. And so it could also receive funding from any number of other sources and organize itself in a way that it could leverage opportunities that don't just come from the CDC.
So it's fully independent.
Yes, that's exactly what I've been saying.
Fully independent.
As the state statute on
Funded in
the
some
English
ways.
tax is, though, it has to go through the
Yeah.
CDC.
Yeah.
CDC.
Yes, and you can fund.
CDC is the receiving body.
Right.
For the English tax. So from there, then CDC could then, say that the 1%, or, the one of the 8%, goes to EBC, the one of the 8% goes to quality of life. So that all has to go, and that's where we created the memorandum of understanding that, council and commissioners all agree on also. Well, commissioners know.
Kevin, go.
So the three items, and again, tourism is part of this, but we've been spending a lot of time talking about economic development, parks and recreation, and quality of life. I do not see quality of life or parks and recreation, and I think that's what I heard, following under the activities of the EDC. Is that right or wrong?
No.
Am I right?
Say that again.
I don't see these routes, so for example, I don't see parks and recreation activities as far as funding and that kind of thing from dollars here, nor quality of life activities. That one can be kind of questionable because if you go through and say paving or sidewalks to the fairgrounds, right, that's questionable. I'm gonna go back to what I said. I think we need to take and focus on either parks and recreation or quality of life with this project list that we have here, and put structure in place that because again, the structure from a statutory standpoint, it is the CBC and the council. I'd like to see us in, you're saying, hey, we gotta have some kind of structure. I don't know what the structure is, and I don't know that you guys set a timeline, so that doesn't mean that it can't be changed. But those two things, you gotta get a win under your belt. If you don't get a win under your belt, after you're collecting this 3%, you're letting it go, you are going to sow discontent. It is going to quickly fall into what I said earlier. You don't have any idea what your strategy is, what your planning is, what your accomplishments is. So I see in those two categories there, parks and recreation and quality of life, is where we can make headway, we can put structure in place, it falls within the statutory compliance that we have today, whether it be through a grant process or a framework process or a statutory ordinance given by the council to allocate percentage in those categories, how that is. The EDC, in my opinion, is a much longer effort.
And Kevin, I don't think there's been a lot of discussion about that because I don't think there's a lot of disagreement at the table about it. And I feel like a lot of that stuff is fairly straightforward. That, you say that, but at the same time, we got to know the budget lines that need to be replaced. Those are quick, easy things, or that fall under the work that
one of my budget.
that the council does. And then, beyond that, here's a list of projects, then those projects, by the heads of those agencies go to the CBC to ask for money for a shelter or whatever the case may be.
And I think those are the short-term wins that
Yeah.
you're talking about.
What?
Yeah, again, we're getting back to the EDC being a granting entity, and that is not what's happening with an EDC typically.
Gosh,
They don't give away
if I,
money, they
if
bring
I,
money
if
in.
I said that, then no,
No,
that's
I
not
thought
what I
I
mean.
misunderstood.
No,
Okay, what seems to be forming here is, okay, if we take the three buckets, it's the Parks and Rec, EDC, quality of life, I mean, that may need to change. What we've got here is the money comes from the CVC, goes into this group right now, at this point structurally, and they say, okay, Parks and Rec gets this, CVC gets that, or whatever. Some entity is doing that in quality of life, but we are quality of life. So maybe we need to say another distinction there. But that seems to be where we're presently at. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, the money has been passed, and this group has been asked to make
So do we want to,
recommendations.
how do we want to either move, how do we want to alter that or develop
we're
that?
good.
Or how do we want to do it?
no, I think, I would agree, I think it's fine as well. But then also, too, what you're saying is that we're getting stuck on an economic development corporation, but here's the thing, I don't want to sit there and give $50,000 worth of innkeeper's tax money to redo the historic village when it could have only taken $25,000 and we got a matching
We got a
grant.
matching grant for
But
it.
we can't because we don't have an economic development or a point person.
Let's unpeel that a little bit, because I don't think economic, I mean, they can. I think we need to learn more about what an economic development corporation does before we continue to have this conversation, because we're spinning our wheels here. And I think there's a lack of understanding what an EDC for us would look like, what it looks like for everyone else around us. And then you gotta kind of have a better understanding. I'm happy to invite a speaker, a 10-minute speaker from an adjacent county of your choosing. I know all of them. He was the president of an economic development corporation.
One time we talked about it.
I don't-
Yeah, that's what I said, yeah.
I mean, if you want to understand.
I don't think the EDC is critical to these projects here at all. I
It's
think,
critical for
You
other
gotta have
monies that
something.
are out there.
Filing for grants.
That
even,
you're involved in.
I know, but that doesn't necessarily have to go through an EDC.
No,
That it
it
should-
shouldn't. Why would it?
Okay,
Yeah.
question,
It's
we have
ROI.
we have ARA handling our grants. Is that an entity to
Absolutely.
the ROI?
I think we should almost like screen every project we get like through ARA and say, hey, did they do a good job finding all the money, shaping the bushes, yes or no? And if not, money, where is it? And really, up front, we'd say, hey, if you're interested in applying for these funds, go talk to ARA. And then they report to us, hey, we think they have great opportunity in these 5 spaces of funding, funding a project now. Maybe
Well, it's the
that's more.
IDEC that's in charge of this.
Right, and that's separate, right, and that's a funder source, right, that's one of 20.
So you're saying
right?
farm it out?
No, they're internal.
Our grant funding is farmed out through ARA.
Well, you say farmed out, they work for
They're
us.
managing that.
There are,
I mean, a managed, yeah, they're doing what, they're doing
Our
what's
work.
for,
Yeah.
we're, again,
They're
we
paying
have a
for it.
resource, it's not being utilized.
and
Oh.
we use the, hopefully, here's just gonna open that up.
I know, I got this.
I think you may want to do that case by case or
Yeah.
something, because the capacity of organizations in this county varies dramatically.
Yeah.
From one exhausted volunteer and that's it, and no time to even fill out a grant form, to, in a couple rare instances, paid staff.
Okay,
So,
so I don't
Now, Parks
believe,
and Rec department's different and all, but
Yeah.
there's too much variety in capacity.
So
So
it's not a capital project, we probably need to run them through the ringer of finding match money, or,
Yeah.
you know, like, some just won't make sense to send through, but we have resources, I mean, that can help with that. And so, and let's not forget the foundation, because we, don't be mistaken, John, we're gonna lean heavily on you.
there's some, but there are things, and that's fine when we can do it, but
We need it.
But there are a lot of these things that we've already evaluated, vetted, it's been through our committee, we've made a decision, that doesn't mean it
What
should
were you
be.
missing?
Yeah, no, I mean, we get easily 3 times the request that we have the dollars for, so what about the other 2/3? We've already vetted,
Maybe a third was
doesn't
vetted,
mean
like,
that doesn't mean it should be
vetted.
looked at again, evaluated again, but some homework's done, like, are they a legal 501c3 or not?
Yeah, due
Are their
diligence.
finances in good order? You know, do they have a governance board? I mean, we've done a lot of that stuff already.
Yeah, Lynn, I hear you, and I agree, and ARA is a key piece of that. They are the conduit of all of our state, federal funding sources, and so we can't put them in a room and lock them up, we need to turn them loose.
so that is so again, that is the limitation with ARA. ARA is only looking at state and federal grants. I do not believe that they are an organization that looks beyond those
Limited.
areas, right? So again, it goes back to the point that's being made here, is you don't need to just be looking at this, the governmental side of for sourcing, right? ROI, the Uplands organization and all that stuff is a place there, but again, it falls outside of government.
Okay, let me build on
Well,
that.
that really
Because,
is-
well, let me right set that, because you're absolutely right, I kind of lost track of that a little bit. ARA is gonna be, like Kevin said, go after our state and federal, whereas the foundation as a partner is gonna go more towards private funding, the Lilly funding, the ROI, the corporations, the banks, the people who are donating private money, which is actually the most attractive money that we would, in my opinion, want to pair to this, completely strings unattached funding too. We don't want to take a beautiful funding pot with zero strings and tie it, in a perfect world, to a federal program that just bogs us into the dirt. Next thing you know, we've got this heavy administrative thing, we're being dancing around all these federal strings. Like the ideal match, private money, no strings, to no strings, private money.
ROI is not private money.
They're not, and that's what I'm saying,
State,
it's, and you already talked about, hey,
IBC.
well, if we want the money, we gotta dance, and so, but, I mean, I think we target kind of the lowest hanging fruit, and then as needed, we can't fund the project, and we can't find another source, state and federal is the only way, then we kick it there and say, look, we have no other choice,
But don't forget that a third of that money, out of the 750, is Lilly Endowment funds with their strings and their rules attached.
Yeah.
And it's passed through by EDC
Right.
more than controlled by EDC. The other 2/3, the 500, is IEDC.
So again, the world that we're living in is we're here, we're at a point B, we need to get to a point B. I'm looking at the path I think the point B is. I'm just trying to make my adage that I've learned in this is how do you eat an elephant? And we've got an elephant in front of us, and that is one bite at a time.
Here's 3 bites, let me jump in there. Let's just.
I don't want 3 bites.
No, I'm trying to give us some foundation here to move forward, we can grow on. If a nonprofit comes to us with a request, we expect them to have already fully vetted their matching resource pools, their partners, they should be bringing funding. Number 1. Number 2, if additional funding is needed, we can run through ARA, but 3, I mean, the foundation, if we're looking for money, to leverage money, which I think is what we're talking about before. How do we leverage this money, make it 30 million, 40 million? That's what we're talking about. We need nonprofit support, and we need state and federal ARA support, and we need private BCCF support. And maybe I'm missing a tool, but I think that's pretty much what we're talking about.
Well, we need, I know I've said it at least twice this week, we need role definition.
Right.
Clearly. Whose role is it, whose role is it not? And when people wake up in the morning and understand what their role is, or if it's not them, whose it is, things get done.
Well, do we need to, as a group, target some specific things that could be fairly quickly dealt with? From the list, that we even have money from, like pick 3 or 4 projects and kind of focus on those, and then take them to the CV.
So we have one.
Already got one.
And so that you get it out to the community that we're
I
actually.
think Mark's working
On
on the
something
lighting
and-
stuff for the.
So you're exactly right, and that's what this list is. These are
I know, but
essentially immediately fundable projects.
But
just
we
gotta
can't
turn
fund
loose.
all of them, I think we just need to.
Not year 1.
Pick 3.
No, but he's talking about now, let's
Let's pick
pick
3.
3 or something and focus
I think we
on.
gotta get a more complete list, but we
Well, I
did
think
do
we are.
on track.
On track, and
Yeah.
we'll do pickleball and getting with Parks and Rec for.
I don't think you can fully fund all this stuff until the budget lines are dealt with
Right.
what part of this is going to fund the budget lines to
Here's
get
the other
$250,000
Back
out.
to this, I agree, back to this list, the last 2 things I don't think have been vetted. I know they're on this list, but so there's still, and even Wayfair finding signage, I don't even know what that is. Those last 3 are kind of like, hey, let's put these on here, but they've not been vetted as far as I can tell. And so we gotta get our list in order, let's get like what we know. I've added 8 things today that have already been talked about, right? Let's just get a good solid list before we even talk about selecting things. I mean, I'm looking down this list and I don't see a project that's ready to go right now today.
No, I mean,
The
think
baseball
about the park,
diamond?
though.
Well, it's
Think about
almost-
Deer Run Park
Almost ready.
and telling that story.
Yeah,
That story's already started.
yeah,
It's been in the Democrat 3 or
That's
4
right.
times the last year or so. If you add in the other park improvements that we're talking about that are close, you've got a significant investment in a park story to tell.
that
People
benefits the
already know the
community.
start of that story.
Yeah,
We're adding another chapter.
yes,
We can build credibility for this effort by piggybacking on what's already started.
exactly.
That's why you guys are on communications committee
So
right
at
there.
this,
Perfect.
at this rate though, shouldn't a lot of those projects we be looking at in funding and starting next year? So
Yeah.
now we have the end of this year, we can see where our shortfalls are gonna be, because we know we're gonna have Airbnb hurdles, and to see how this money's gonna stabilize out as it's coming in. We gotta know we have it in our pocket before we promise it out.
Well, here's an idea, let's just be real aggressive here, Paul, and feeding off that. What if we put out a call for projects, shovel ready, X% funded or more, and are seeking a match, they've got to be ready to put the dirt. And you've already seen that with flow track, but I think it's a limited, very limited list.
I think you stick with your list.
Yes.
We have work to,
There's
I
money
think-
here.
There's probably things that we
Yeah.
don't know.
That's the thing, I don't wanna like.
I'd say you keep adding to the list, but
Yes.
why
we're
start
not
over?
narrowing
I
it
don't wanna
down.
start over, but
We've got.
What are we missing?
We've got two things right now that we can immediately fund. And that's what we need to focus on. What you're talking about is next year, the year
Yeah.
after, the year after. Stuff that right now, we don't need to add to this list today because we have the pickleball courts and club track. Those are two things that are immediately fundable, that can immediately show results. That's a win in the pocket
Yes.
that the community can see, tourists will see, and will be a benefit. And then we work on expanding that list as we establish the EDC or whatever we're going to
Well, I
use
think
to
our
drive.
next thing to look at should be the fairgrounds too, because we just finished the county fair.
Yeah.
With no grandstand events.
be great construction.
So what can we do now to be ready
Yeah,
for next year?
let's ask, I mean, Kevin, commissioners oversee that whole property, really, it's commissioner property fairgrounds. Can you get us an investment?
So
request?
Dan Cartwright, I tasked him this morning with actually spending time next week, going through and actually looking at everything and anything associated with the fairgrounds. As far as the structure, the lighting, the facilities, all those things.
Parking.
And he's doing an evaluation on all of our buildings right now.
This is our owner's rep, our new owner's.
Yes, sir.
Tell them, just real quick.
Yeah, so who is this guy?
So Dan Cartwright is a gentleman that I was recommended by Brian Baird, who's a Johnson County Commissioner. Brian Baird was one of the commissioners that was responsible for the overall construction project. He quickly came to the realization that one man, himself as a commissioner, could not do that. So they created a position called construction manager in Johnson County. And he is basically, was the first person hired and brought on board to facilitate that. So he's been involved with, his last big project with them was actually giving them all the details and structures and information to set up a Department of Public Works, because they had grown at their splash pads, all their parks and all those things. And all of that was falling on the highway department. It wasn't even set up. So he went through and had that, set that structure up and gave them the details and documentation for that. He's also a person that had the Rawhide Ranch on South 135. He was and had interest in the county as far as that business himself. He's got economic development
You're
background.
talking about the guy they hired or the commissioner?
We're talking about Dan Cartwright.
Dan guy,
We
okay.
got that skill set in this person.
Well, then let's, yeah.
So so the commissioners did hire him?
Yes,
for that
sir.
role? Okay.
Absolutely.
Is that a contract role?
It is. He is on a contract role, and right now he's on a not to exceed $40,000.
So he would be petitioning on the youth committee just as we decide to award a grant, but mainly on the back end
Before it gets to the table.
construction oversight, before we write a check. He's checking permits, he's checking.
He's
liability.
basically, so for example, he just basically brought, we as commissioners, when we got the tab for the money to view the construction in the courthouse, I said, well, I have no idea, I have no experience, I know nothing about this. So again, first thing that we had him do is go down, evaluate, walk through the scope of work with the contractor. He identified the shortfall with regards to needing soundproofing in the offices. because of the sensitive nature of the people that are dealing with probation and corrections, right? So he's gone through and identified the shortfall, made sure the materials lists were in order, and that the construction costs were in line on a per square foot basis with that activity.
Okay, he can help us with construction, he can help us anticipate issues. Let's put it to work if we can, and we've got to pay him out of these funds. So let's just add that to our list of kind of procedural things. Brian?
We can't do that.
What was
Scott, he's just gonna let you create the agenda probably.
Why
going
wouldn't
forward.
the county pay that? Because it's county property.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Whoever pays for it, yeah.
It's a county function, and we can't pay for that out of it because it's a county salary. So.
Yeah,
that's on the
but
table.
We've
It's
got to have
not
it.
a contract, though, it's different than the salary.
It's
But-
different, I mean, it's, yeah, we'll figure it out.
So I'm ultimately still a little bit lost, and here's why. Because we keep talking about all these reviews and these committees and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So like what? Like, can we come out of this with some kind of how this is gonna work
Yes.
instead of,
Don't worry, I've got it all right here, Brian.
I see that, that is the most beautiful chicken scratch I've
It's
ever
4
seen.
steps. It's award the money to a nonprofit with some oversight, and John.
So that already exists within the
No, that's
statute.
a skeleton. And John, what I'm thinking of for us to help the group to see from point A to point B is like the foundations process for awarding and overseeing money. Like, I mean, the most simple
what are we
4 or 5
awarding?
steps. Like, we just need to see start finish. It's not that complicated, right? I mean,
The more reasonable and straightforward your grant process is, the better quality and variety of projects you get.
yeah. So
The
we just
harder
need
you
like
make
that.
it, the more people just don't even try.
And then it's more costly administratively for us and the nonprofits, and it's just, but there's a balance there, and this construction oversight helps us with that, but, I mean, can you get us like a 5 to 10 step implementation process for awarding these funding? And you can even take your own, but way watered down, right? Like, step 1 through 6 is this, because we're not, these people do this every day, all day, for hundreds of years, they've been doing this kind of thing, right? And so, we don't have to like recreate all of this. It's probably a.
Why don't I bring to the next meeting a sample of our application,
If they're
Okay.
easy,
and then
Yeah,
just
it's not.
walk it through? Yeah,
I mean,
you've
there's a
done it.
million guys.
Yeah.
It's like yours.
Well,
So
we
who's-
successfully.
So who's going to take the application then, since the Community Foundation does that for their own processes? Like, so for all of this stuff we're wanting to do, once we come up with a process, who is, yeah, but, I mean, that's great that you want the CDC to do that,
I think we have a review committee, a grant committee.
but yes,
Who's gonna
this,
get them?
they want oversight. I mean,
What do you mean?
this
Again.
board, this work group
Yeah.
wants oversight.
Well,
Did I say it a 4th time? We
What?
need clarity of roles.
we are the oversight currently, right? Right, I mean, it is us, right? And so, but.
What was that, John?
Well, do we
Now,
not-
here's what I'm saying. The grant
horse
committee-
is dead. and
No, let's
continues
go
to
back.
be dead.
The grant committee reviews the projects. The grant committee doesn't make any decisions. John, is that true of the foundation as well? The grant committee doesn't make final decisions.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, they
Grants
do.
That's the
They make their
purpose of
recommendation,
grants.
they make their recommendation to the board, right? And the board-
Oh, well,
Yeah, who makes final decisions?
the
Not
board
committee.
votes on a proposed
Right.
list.
Ultimate authority in the board.
By
and
the
that
time
board
it gets
says
to the
no.
board meeting, it's been through the grants committee in
Right.
detail, staff vetting, the exec committee has reviewed it, so it would take something pretty egregious for the board not to accept the
But it's the
committee's.
board's
But it's
final
their
decision,
vote.
not the committee's.
Correct.
But
You
the
can only
committees do all the
authorize.
work.
But,
And they
yeah,
prep it for
Yeah.
the board or with the CDC or the
CDC.
council.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's an extensive vetting and ultimate authority in an oversight role.
correct.
Well, wouldn't that be this, very similar to like the APC, Area Plan
Yeah,
Commission?
exactly.
To the commissioners?
Yeah.
Where in this paradigm, it would be the Quality of Work Commission that's getting recommendations to the CBC. Where the CDC has the oversight, but they're using the quality of work folks as the build in those recommendations.
That's exactly what's happening here. And this is not, I think we're a lot further along than we think with those steps. And then it goes to the CDC, then it goes to the council. We have multiple steps, including through this committee, grant committee comes to us, we maybe vet it, then it goes to Kevin, then they vet it, then, right? So I mean, I think we're okay, Brian, in terms of your oversight concern and all of our oversight concerns, right?
But let me throw out two other things that allow that grant committee process to work. Right? There's a long-term strategic plan that sets priorities and by definition excludes some things that are not priorities, right? So you get that long-term strategy Kevin was talking about.
Let's talk about those 3 or 4
And then
things
the
that we already
finance
talked about,
committee-
priorities, so we can plug that in.
The finance committee, as part of the overall budget process, is saying, grant committee, you have this many dollars.
The finance committee would be CBC.
They set the
council.
financial boundary as well.
That would be
So
us.
strategy tells you priorities, budget tells you how many dollars to work with, then the grant committee goes to work within those guardrails.
So the strategy, just let me build on this, the strategy, we've created 4 focus area strategies, 3 or 4. The quality of life, Parks and Rec, that's our strategic focus that we've developed over months as a group. The second thing is the financial oversight. CBC and council have been working on this for months as well. And so we've got that, and ultimately it has a process already in place. We can't change it. It is what it is, right? So the financial oversight above the CBC is good. It's below that CBC, which are just recommendations from council. So we can already fit into this. I mean, pretty seamless.
So we're already behind the 8 ball. Because well, hold on, but hold on, and this is why I say that, because we should already have 3 projects or whatever we wanted that total to be.
Yeah.
Ready for 2026.
Yes.
Because budget cycle is here. Your deadline for submitting budgets is July 1st.
I was under the impression, based on what you're saying, is that the CBC would come to the county council for additional appropriations for these projects.
Well, and
Right.
I haven't submitted the budget yet, but, I mean, we voted on our budget the last meeting, and we have a line item in there already at $500,000 for these type of projects, so that the council can go ahead and approve, so we're not going for additional appropriation right away.
So what I'm saying is, we already have,
as part of the
a
process,
$500,000 window.
I've already put
with-
$500,000
for this
in there
next-
for next year.
For next year.
Yeah, and we may put that up to 750.
Good job,
Right,
CBC.
I just wanted to give us, because it's, till we
I think
see
it
what our
matters.
collections are gonna be, I didn't wanna,
I don't wanna bump it up the whole amount.
yeah, I didn't
would
wanna
like
jump
to
it
have-
until it's.
I would like to have.
We need to have a little bit of a cushion there
Here's
for
the challenge.
shortfalls, and, it's like property tax. Yeah, property tax should bring in this much every year, but it never does. Because there's always people you're chasing for money. So you're always a little bit shorter than what you think you're gonna get.
And starting next week, this money's coming in. There are going to be glitches and hiccups in the first
Yeah, first
3,
90
4,
days.
5 months
I-
of this
I have-
cycle.
I
So
know.
we can project money, we can
Okay.
project revenue from this, but I don't want to spend projected revenue and find out.
Well, and there again, if we
Okay.
start with $500,000, we'll be.
Well, and you gotta remember, there's,
I know, Kevin's
we
got his
we
hand
started
up.
the year with 1.6.
Go ahead.
We started the year
Okay.
with 1.6 million in cash reserves in this, in Cooper's tax fund.
Yeah.
Just sitting there doing nothing, right? So the pump track, they're trying to kind of right-size that.
It's not
And
sitting
then-
there doing nothing. It's
Yeah, sitting there doing
accumulating, it's accumulating
Oh, it's-
for,
Accumulate, doing that, I guess, if that's
Which is-
something.
which is good because what we're looking at an EDC, that accumulation of money is good because that is the savings account. It's going to pay for the
Totally agree.
EDC going
Yes,
forward.
totally agree.
So it's not
I
wasteful.
also know that we have some unmet immediate needs, and I don't want that money sitting in a bank account making 0.005%.
Oh,
Our
We're
goal
there.
is to keep $1 million.
Okay, so,
Okay.
so here's my thing, though.
I don't want to
If
hurry
we
and
have-
spend it though, when we have needs, like we have, one of our 3 buckets is EDC.
Yes, yeah.
That's a very expensive,
Don't forget your
Effort.
council hat, public safety. Where's that money coming from?
oh, that's all part of it. That's beyond this.
Oh,
These
it's in
3
addition
buckets.
to this. That's where I'm trying to get.
No,
Because we
because
can't just forego public safety.
no, we're not. Parks and Rec, one of the buckets of this, the Parks and Rec and the quality of life is freeing up money in the community foundation and council.
Yes.
That's beyond this. That's not in these buckets.
Okay, we need to talk about the innkeeper's tax money, because Patty and I are looking at each other,
We're talking beyond.
yeah, we
And
haven't
we haven't even
even
figured out
got
how to
there.
collect it.
Yeah,
I'm an innkeeper going, did we decide that come the first payment, did the county say that we are having to eat it? is it that you're gonna accept what we send in? If I collected $20,000, am I gonna lie and put 18, so it's not coming out of my pocket? I mean,
I think
we
all the
haven't
council said is,
kind
as
of
of July
talked.
1, the law is you collect 8%, period. That's it. If you want to do whatever you do what you do, and you know, you'll reap the consequences or rewards. So,
Well,
I mean,
and the reason why we're in this position, let me just say, because her frustration is
Frustration.
because you sprung it on us so fast and gave us no
We're really
time to
quick to
get
spend
this
it.
stuff in place. And so that's what's caused frustration, just a heads up. We're all for it, but this could have been better planned instead of cramming it down our
we
throat.
passed
Oh, yeah.
60
We
days
accepted
before
it here,
it's
2 weeks later.
Yeah,
we're supposed to
it's like,
collect that.
boom, but that's why I
Well,
said
no,
we're in
it's-
agreement with it,
We
but
started the process.
we needed a better, longer plan than
And we
just-
talked about that, 90 days, we ended up on 60 days, I think, but after talking about it for another 60 days, but, so, yeah, understood. It's not gonna be perfect.
Which is why I said at the beginning, I thought we
Pay
were
what
kind
you,
of,
It
I didn't
do
want
it.
to, I didn't want to rush this.
Yes,
you're gonna pay what
no.
you collected.
Yes.
You're gonna pay what you
Thank
Pay what
collected.
you collected.
Yes,
Yeah,
Thank
if
you.
that equals 8%, then you're legal. Yeah,
okay.
if it
Pay what
doesn't,
you
you're not.
collected.
Not a perfect
Period.
system.
Yeah, collect the 8%. That's what all of these projects hinge
But if
on.
somebody
When you ask
made
yourself,
a,
should I collect the money? Look at one of these
if
projects, and just pick
somebody
one you don't want to
made a
fund.
reservation at your Airbnb for December, and they made that back in April,
Right?
your agency is only gonna take 5 because that's all they were required to do. Now comes December, but they're already locked in at that 5%.
There's a different tax rate now.
Yeah, he's telling us to collect the new. Yeah.
That's-
So
that's the same
we're
way
not
state
in my
tax.
pocket.
Same way with state sales tax, state.
So
raises-
it's exactly no different.
Property
Increase the
taxes.
state sales tax, the gas tax, whatever.
Everything.
July 1st, and you placed orders for fuel in the future, they're gonna come back and collect
You
the
can't
sales tax.
not pay.
The state tax.
The current tax. I mean, it's just, yeah. We asked for exemptions, grandfathering, you know, all these things of our attorney.
Well, maybe you should have laid it out a little bit longer to help these.
Well, maybe you could help us if you were here to do that. but
I
that's-
wasn't, I wasn't invited.
Nobody, hang on, no, hang on. No one told us
There
this
wasn't a
increase was
suggestion made, we
happening
didn't start collecting.
until it was already up there.
Right?
Nobody.
Got a hand raised.
So, Scott, you said at our last meeting that you were gonna talk to someone at the state and see if you could leverage some way to have the state tell Airbnb and whatever these other OTAs are to make them do it, or they eat it.
Yeah.
Well,
The innkeeper should
They're
be
not,
able to-
Airbnb is not gonna eat it,
So.
and the
here's-
state can't do anything about it.
I disagree. I'm working on that. I've reached out to our attorney. I've not heard back to my frustration about that exact issue, because I want to sit in front of the state and these companies to say, tell the state you're not going to follow the law, right in front of us. And then we go from there.
I don't think I need to be.
If you put the word out.
Well, no, but they're telling us they're not gonna
You're
collect
gonna have
tax.
an upper.
And these projects and pickle.
Well, that's what I'm saying, we could, you know, there are.
We could have got it done if we would have known sooner.
On this going forward, that's what I said. There's a few months of this, there are going to be hiccups and
Yeah,
unforeseen
Yeah.
things, and.
the whole process
I
is
don't
gonna
want-
be slow to start. It
Yeah.
will be. It's so that happens.
We're willing to go through this, is what I'm trying to say.
So do I
But the
understand
problem
process.
is it was sprung on us.
And if we.
And no one talked to us about it, and that's where the problem, if you would have told us, we could have started prep for
I'd
this.
love to hear this conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was kind of involved, but anyway, not the.
Yeah, don't throw it into the family,
Just
minivan there.
okay.
Yeah,
So let's do this. Let's
Hang
do
on,
this.
hang on.
Go ahead, Patty.
Hang on.
Patty's
Yeah.
got
We have been in a group for a long time, Scott. And please don't, like, Sandy, sorry you haven't been here. So if you would have been here, you could have talked. I mean, we gotta be
We've talked about this
calm
for a
with
long
each
time.
other.
So let's do this. Let's do this. Let's start, if you guys, I mean, you guys are the most interested in that issue, right? I mean, I don't have to get involved, nobody else here does.
No, I know.
Some do. So do we want to start
You
at,
dumped it on our plate.
and this is one of those of probably 5 areas where we have much deeper work to do. It's like the communication committee, I think is our only committee that we've actually formed where we have communication issues, we've got communications people. Let's push this down to a committee that says, yeah, you guys are good at that, let's do it. you guys are good at the collections piece. I know Brian has been working through the CVB, which is kind of our outlet for resolving some of these issues. Templates of talking points for Airbnb owners, how do you manage customers, like they've got it. So I mean, if we want a committee to work on this, because I'm not really involved in that, and Lynn's probably not either, and Mike has no interest either. So if we have a problem to solve, let's solve it.
I personally don't see the need for the CVB to come up with talking points for them on how to deal with their customers or anybody else. I just don't, that to me is not.
There again, what I would say is, you tell your people there's an increase in tax. And what you collect is what you pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just deal with it.
What you
That's
collect.
what I said, we'll have to
What you
deal with
pay.
whatever is missed after the fact.
Most people, I believe, are going to say, okay, there was a tax increase.
The system is
That's
not
why-
automatically doing that.
I know, but
Yeah.
you tell your people when
Yeah,
there's.
you don't wanna make somebody
When they check
mad
out.
and cancel a
Well, that's gonna be-
reservation either, so, and some people are just not away. Some people want it out for some reason.
Yes, and they'll use it.
And they'll use it. So what you collect is what you pay.
So do we
Yeah.
want a committee to work on the operationalizing of the implementation of the tax? Do you think we need a
Let
solution?
it happen. As Kevin says, just let it happen.
Let it happen, let us deal with it, we'll deal with it.
What you
We're the
collect is
professionals
what
at
you
this,
pay.
let
Yeah,
us
I'm not
deal
trying to
with
ignore
it.
the issue. We have been talking about it for a while. It's at the end, it's gonna just be a little messy. I think.
On the grand scale, though, this was a short.
Yeah.
Sure was, but even if we would put it off
You
to
know,
collect in
even-
January, you're gonna have to.
even- even-
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not real till it's voted on.
Yeah, if this was approved by, even back in December or January, that's still a short-term spring on them, because they're 2 years out.
Well, anybody who's on a reservation a year out.
Yeah, but here's the
Again,
thing,
the state had
I could have
raised
put
the-
things in place to prevent this. I would have started something in January and then going back and adjusting it.
We didn't really, I mean.
Yes, that's all I'm saying. It's
On
like
the other side of
preventative.
it, though, we didn't know
Well, you can't
until,
control the legislature.
the end of April.
Yes.
I mean, that's where my frustration comes, just like I said, I've been working on this since October of last year, so I do feel like it's been on my mind very clearly, many.
But did you share it with anybody?
It's been on national
Well, you-
news, it's been on regional newspapers, it's been on our local news, I mean, the press has been.
Well,
Yeah, but, so, let me put the damn statement that it is, you cannot take action until it is passed.
Right.
And that's where it's
And we
like.
didn't know it was
When
gonna
we started charging
Everything
people
waits till the
8%
day
and all,
after.
here we sit with money, we didn't, you just.
And as someone who started in October, followed it very closely every day, I didn't know until the day the legislature ended, the night, of like 11:30 at night, the night the legislature ended their
It would-
surpass. And so
The
it's
ti-
just one of those things.
The timing
So-
would have been better to roll just in January in general, because we wouldn't have had so many reservations on the books, but
Yeah.
it came
A
out in
lot
July.
of those would have rolled
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, because July is our second busiest month of the year, and then taking an
Yeah,
effect
so it's
that,
okay to approve it, and
Yeah,
say we're
but-
gonna make it valid.
January,
January 1 would've been-
January would have been much easier.
Yeah, we
But
did a lot of those.
But we're trying to
rolled
take
off.
advantage
it
of
would
the
have
money,
been,
and we get
yes,
it, but.
yeah, we get it.
It's like, yeah, we were.
Okay, so then I think
There
her
again,
statement is
What you
most
collect is what you
reasonable.
I
pay.
agree.
So you pay more than what you.
Pay what you
Keep saying
collect.
it.
Right, and don't get caught,
Right
on
up
that
to-
January 1.
Okay, so I'm sorry if I'm a little fiery, but
No, I
it's
get
like,
it. I get
you
it. No,
understand,
that's your,
like,
like,
Those
most
redheads.
affected. You two are probably in that.
We are the worst,
You two are the
yes,
most.
And
we
the
have the
people in the-
largest workload
People in the
on
audience
this one.
behind you, Scott, too, are
You
very,
can-
very
Uh,
effective.
You can vent, okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, who are
Something we
you?
can do, we will, but it sounds like we need to
Artist
move on.
Colony?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I know Pam.
So
but
we've done a really good job of talking about using a lot of the Brown County Community Foundation's processes in order to talk about who takes the application, the vetting process, and then providing a recommendation to the CVC, and then the CVC going to the council on that. So I think that we've done a good job of doing that. And I think that we can get a lot of materials from you, including, I don't know if you do some kind of scoring process for that or whatever the case may be. And then, having a framework in place for, community impact and how we can continue to sustain a lot of these things. Because if we do talk a lot about projects and things for Parks and Recs and the fairgrounds, at some point, there's gonna have to be upkeep and maintenance costs associated with those that we'll have to really look at. And then, funding readiness, I think we have some work to do in regards to some of that, just based upon some of the stuff that we've added in here. But ultimately, we've got to start working on maybe some additional pricing or finalizing the project costs of these things. In terms of that, is the baseball diamond upgrades, is that $150,000, or can it be done in stages, or whatever the case may be? I don't know.
So, just bring it here, because that to me, that Parks and Recs, you remember Parks and Rec, whatever, is a discussion between us, because council needs to take a real hard look at what Parks and Rec's budget is. My expectation in walking from that is to sit there and say, we should be giving them an operations budget. They should be paying their salaries, their benefits, and those things out of the money that comes out of the collection of property tax, income tax, and those kinds of things. To me, where they have had shortfalls, where there's dollars built in, is they had supposedly budgeted funds for a shelter house. They had budgeted funds for a gazebo that was all those things. Project-oriented kind of things, I see that as where I would like to see those dollars coming from the innkeeper's tax side of things, right? Splash pad, enhancements to the paving, ADA compliance, lighting, concessions. That's a hard category. So what needs to be penciled sharpened on this so that we can see where that $200,000 plus budget is what does it truly take to operate the parks? My concern is you start adding these amenities, there's more maintenance, so therefore there are more bodies required to keep it up. Okay, so that's something that's going to be a very fine edge that has to be played. Now, I know we've talked about it, but maintenance is another part of that, right? So we just, as a county, took the donations, and now we're sitting there saying, now I've got to maintain with the assistance of maybe the pickleball club, but there's no dedicated dollars identified coming from them every year saying, here's what's going to go toward maintenance. Like, well, we'll do a fundraiser and that kind of stuff. So maintenance is a balance there. I don't know how that fits into the.
Sounds like we're gonna fund the project, but then the maintenance.
What would be part of the vetting project is if we give you money to fulfill your project, you have got to prove you are going to be able to maintain it.
That's right. We don't
on your budget after we approve it.
Here's the
So
problem.
we don't want to carry on.
But aren't the pickleball courts county property now?
Yeah, it is.
So, that would fall into
Because
the
we don't
Parks and
want to
Rec.
be responsible for the maintenance of
No,
it.
I'm not talking
The
about, I'm
pump
just saying
track would
that
be
those are
county
gonna-
property as well, right? Or is that?
Maintain it
Right, but then the
after
county
fact.
budget would have to increase to take care of
Right on
it,
that
to do
basis.
the
We'll be back.
maintenance.
So while we're doing great things with this money, we are now going back and putting what we thought we could recover from saved
We
funds,
talked about
a
it,
burden on that.
we talked about it a couple of meetings,
No, you're right.
Including maintenance. At some point that we would have to pay maintenance out of this or something.
I'm not saying
the
it's.
innkeeper's tax. What does that look like? Does that look like salaries?
No,
No. I'm not talking labor and.
Average salaries is.
You gotta research, you gotta pay human
Salaries
rights, you gotta
cannot be
research.
covered by this.
No,
Hold the
that's right.
phone, hold the phone, hold the phone. We're way off track. We're way off track. We're way off track. Okay, we are.
No, we're not.
We can fund salaries. We've worked millions into funding salaries out of the innkeeper's tax since 1985.
We can't fund
Number
government
one,
salaries.
yes, we can. Number two, we fund maintenance of the visitor center with these funds, always have, So to say those things are just completely untrue, in my opinion. And they're also.
But the visitor center's not county property.
Exactly.
Yeah, the
They're
visitor
also
center.
that's
that's
what
not
like, how does that matter?
It's a non-for-profit.
Right.
It matters
Why does that matter? Words matter, and it's a felony if we break the law.
So the law.
It's gotta be
says you can't
tourism.
fund any
It has to be
public
tourism,
facility,
it has to be
already did.
nonprofit.
So I think you're gonna be in jail at the end of the day.
Okay, we're done. So again,
Oh my God.
this is a question that needs to be put before an
I
attorney.
think it can be addressed.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
This is
just.
I'm just saying that all of a sudden, we're 5, 6, 7 years down the road, we gotta resurface pickleball courts.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a fee. It's something that's gotta be done, you know? And
But
it's
that
like-
would be
Well, here's
my
what-
end.
Right.
Yeah, and project.
I know from,
Yeah.
from a CVC member perspective, I want to speak for myself, but let's say we do fund the pickleball courts, what we're kind of trying to do, it's a good thing, right? I think we'll all agree it's a nice thing to have. If we look in 10 years from now and say, hey, this pickleball court's actually doing a really good job on bringing tourism into the community, we need to keep it up to be able to have tourism. There's a certain percentage of that pickleball court that's used for tourism, and you can say, okay, well, that percentage that's tourism related, we're gonna fund. But if
So that's what I was understanding when we talked about maintenance aspect of it. It was kind of like, we'll go back and make it a project, as long as it's in an improvement plan, right? Or in an asset management plan.
Maybe-
Here's what I
Could we
felt.
possibly have, when we do
But you
something
said
like this, a possible cost to maintain added in
I've
there?
asked for it.
Yeah.
Like every year, so if we fund this, then this is what it's gonna cost for us to maintain.
We are going to fund
Doesn't matter.
a capital project that has ongoing maintenance requirements of property tax payers or income tax payers. And we are taking on a burden up here to install a facility. What we don't want to continue to do, what these funds allow us to stop doing, in my mind, is the ball field lights are a perfect example. 20 years ago, we put in ball field lights. Zero funding for ongoing maintenance of those lights. Now go down there and look at the condition of those lights.
Yeah, but that's
Hold
changing.
on. Is that the scenario we want to continue to come up against? And we do it to ourselves, get wound up here.
No, we've already worked,
We've already, yeah.
we've already worked this out.
We don't want that.
No, we've already worked that out. That's the whole purpose of this and setting up these funds is so that doesn't happen. That's what we're working on.
But we're gonna make a decision in 5 years whether we want to drive the facility into the dirt, because whether we want to.
No,
There's an
No.
aspect of
Oh,
it
my
too. If these improvements are gonna start bringing in more people, tournaments, this, that, and the other, that means these entities' revenue ought to be going up to shoulder some of this. Should be,
Right, we got.
or else you're just gonna, everybody's gonna be standing here with their hand out every time they turn around.
Yeah.
Exactly. If it does nothing.
Yeah, there should be, yeah, absolutely, they need to be paying for it, the facility, you can't do it for free.
I just don't know. That's what I said. I have research.
Too big conversation.
So what's next for the electricity?
So I think ongoing maintenance and
Then you need
upkeep
to charge
is a critical, currently unfunded piece of any project that we fund. And to Kevin's point, what Kevin is trying to kind of warn us about is, hey, look, guys, if you fund a splash pad, county council, you are going to have additional expenses.
No, we're not, because that's part of.
Hold on, he's not completely wrong.
No, he's not.
Stop, let me.
I'm just trying to catch up here, because I thought we were going to do maintenance.
There is a
I'm just
difference
trying to catch
between,
up.
there's a difference between planning and, again, I started saying that we do a poor job of planning. That's being addressed.
Yes.
So there's a 5-year look at, with not very much detail on the latter 5-year projects, but on the first-year projects, right, that are being worked on. So again, part of my activities in having conversation with Mark Shields and looking at that is, Mark, you need to be seal coating these parking lots if you're going to have new parking lots every 3 years.
Yes.
And, oh, by the way, you need to plan on crack maintenance every year.
Yep.
You need to plan on going through and looking at and doing a review of the safety equipment related to the pump track or the cracks or the skateboard, like those kinds of things. So my comment is, as long as we can continue to address some of those costs as asset management planning for the future, that will help relieve the burden. But there's still a burden.
From the start of the meeting of this group, that's exactly what I
Right.
said. Now, hold on, let me answer this. Hold on, before we go too far into this, this has been addressed. From the start, that was my intent with this group. Every detail of the spending of this money is nailed down into a memorandum of understanding between council and CDC of what this money does. There is a bucket of money as part of this new 3% from the innkeeper's tax that covers the maintenance of everything that is created under this spending plan.
Understood.
We've looked, so we're not.
Understood, but the addition, but I'm bringing foresight to envision to Elliot at Parks and Recs is not gonna be able to go and take care of a new splash pad by himself. He's not gonna be able to take care of the pickleball courts by himself.
Right.
As this investment grows, there is going to be some level of cost that does impact and burden the general fund on the county.
Well, that's what, that from the start, I've said, we've got 3% coming in here extra. One of those buckets needs, 1% bucket needs to be for the EDC.
Yeah.
One of those 1% buckets needs to be for all of the new projects, the pickleball courts, the maintenance, the upkeep, repairs. That's one of the 1%. The other 1% goes toward the quality of life.
Understood.
And
So,
other.
I'm just trying to bring to the audience at large.
Before you even talk about buckets, you have to skim right off the top what goes to your budget for whatever public safety improvements you want to make. And then once that's gone, then the rest can go towards this.
That's like the $500,000.
Can I just offer a little reassuring comment on a couple of things? All of this you've been talking about is not new and unique to this group today.
No.
It's all been dealt with.
Yeah.
I was part of the All Funder Coalition in Marion County, led by Lilly Endowment and Indianapolis Foundation. The whole grant evaluation distribution process factors this stuff in. Our form does. What you're looking at is when they apply for the grant, you're asking for a total budget, not just the thing they're asking for, and you want to look at our administrative costs factored in and allowed for. You decide as a grant-making organization, do you allow for admin costs? It's standard for funders to say, we will fund no admin costs, or I've seen up to 25% caps. It's normal. The funder tells you whether they will or not. You put it in the request as part of your grant and your total budget. The other thing that we should be looking at, which again is standard process, is that future year dependency.
Yeah.
Funders, and we should probably be no different than other funders out there, they don't want to feel like they're getting stuck in the first yes. For every year in perpetuity, the same request comes back. There are some of those in this county that we do, but it's a conscious decision every year, do we do this another year? So ongoing dependency, admin costs. The other thing, back to a comment, I've been waiting to say this since you said it a while ago, when you asked about the scoring matrix or that sort of thing. In that, we've got the left-hand column that lists all the grant requests, and across the top of that big tracking, or this, I would say it's a decision matrix, are the grant pool of funds, the so-and-so family fund, the Cummins fund, we could do a modified version of that, right? Is the CBC 3% pool, the county budget, the foundation, the school system, whatever those, and it is a great process as we make decisions to say, is this shared funding or are we doing it all? It gives us a good chance to build partnership. It's a better story to the community that we're all talking and coordinating investments and priorities. So that, thanks for the reminder. I think that document is a good process.
Maybe one of the lines, one of the columns is simply, are you going to need additional funds to maintain these facilities in the next 15 years?
Well, I think
It's a standard question in the grant application.
They all ask that.
And the other thing too, I think on our, as part of the paperwork, and I don't know, here's the thing, I want you to send me your grant application and stuff after the meeting today. So, because I want to look at it, and I think it would be helpful for the purposes of our continuing discussions. But when we start talking about a pump track and a pickleball court, I think we've got to go and ask our friends Google, like, how much money can you make off of a tournament and so that can be part of the, like, if, let's say that they come to you and ask those questions, well, we're going to receive this money to build it, but then this is how much money we expect to make on it per year because of a tournament or whatever the case may be. And a lot of that can help with the ongoing costs of it.
Most years aren't money generating projects, so they're just driving, right?
No, but you want to have
that column.
some confidence.
Any monetary brought in anything of that nature.
And
And
that's
I'll
where
just
some-
be
that's where
honest,
some of the quality of life projects, they're simply quality of life. And they have.
But it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, the
it
splash
sounds like
pad,
a lot
you're
of
gonna
Parks
eat
and
it,
Rec stuff
but
that
I mean,
will
on
be
some of
used
the-
to host tournaments and stuff that will generate some funds.
Yes.
Well, let's take an example, Stephanie alluded to something, let's say we put lights out by the Salt Creek Trail to make it a little river walk, cute little thing. Touristy, who pays the electricity?
Well, that's why I said,
That's
who
what
pays
you
the
brought up.
electricity?
Yeah, so who pays the electricity? Nice that you got the poles up there, but now who's gonna pay the electricity?
Plug them into the Brian County and let Barry.
You know what?
He's not here today.
It's being recorded.
That's all right. I'll tell him to his face.
Well, so those are the inherent issues that we
we may
have to
find out it's
address.
already paid.
It's a sustainability question, right, in the
Yeah.
application, like how are you going to
Sustainability.
sustain
I
this
mean,
project
yes.
moving forward, and what funding sources will you
Oh,
use?
yeah.
And if the county's on there and the council hasn't seen it, that's where I get nervous, right, because we're committing ourselves to taxing residents to maintain those facilities without knowing it up front.
Well, that's the whole purpose of this. is-
Why rather than-
Well, so I'm not trying to be the naysayer.
Because Kevin's gonna be the one to have to come ask us, he's gonna be in the hot seat, he's gonna come to us.
Yeah,
The
but
first-
can't-
And the first thing I'm going to do is ask you to double the budget for the construction manager.
Yeah, oh,
Okay,
yeah,
but
that's,
if
we'll look
we-
at Kevin and say, Kevin, no.
Can't
We
we,
talked about
as
that
a
already, too,
group,
so.
when we
Yeah.
have these projects though, can't we look at, okay, this is gonna cost the
Yeah,
county
you
even
could.
more money, so it's just mixed?
Well, yeah, some projects aren't gonna make
Yeah,
sense.
they're just
It's
not gonna
just-
make it,
right.
it's
It's
just,
not a-
we would love to do
Or
it
some of them
all,
are gonna have to be
but.
done in phases.
So that should be one of the questions I would think on it, is a
You all
check
need to
mark.
see some
Is
grant
this gonna
applications.
increase
Yeah, I've never
You guys see
the,
some grant.
the county, the people that live in the county, is this gonna cost them more money by doing
You
this?
can charge
It
tourists
It is, they are, the
All locals
applications
are free.
will.
If anybody wants to join our grants committee and
Yeah.
firsthand,
Yeah.
Here's the thing, I don't know why we couldn't do all locals and
Yeah,
free all
yeah,
stuff.
I think
But
locals
it's-
should be free.
seriously,
I don't
it's a
like charging
formal
for it, but-
thing.
I'm sorry,
What did you say? I didn't hear.
Thank you over it.
No.
me, okay.
Something about being free?
Well, no, I think that, well, what I said before was that I think it should be a check mark as far as, is this something that's gonna cost our taxpayers more money? That should just be, and then we determine from there. But I think a lot of these things, I think it should be free to the locals what we're doing. I don't wanna charge the locals anymore.
Well, nobody's.
Yes,
That's the intent.
Yeah, I heard somebody say something about it.
well,
Well, that way.
well, no,
Depends on what you're doing.
Depends on
well,
what it is.
like the splash pad and, I mean, I don't know.
With fairgrounds, I mean, there's access
Yeah.
fees and, you
So
know.
there's things that should be, I mean, it should be a benefit of being a
By your
local
village,
and.
you can charge people a little bit if there's an event. maybe.
So are you bringing a speaker about economic development to the next one?
I don't think you're ready for
I don't
that.
think I need, we are
I
either.
think we need a project going.
It's just kind of a very
When
minor
will we be
piece.
ready, what's our plan?
Right,
I think we need it.
we need it.
Huh?
We need to hear
I mean,
from somebody who's
I think
done
that's
this
one of our
before.
buckets we need to get filled.
I agree. Just-
You know,
Start getting that
I wonder if somebody from ROI, you know, the Uplands region might be, achieve more than one thing. If we get the right speaker from there, they can not only talk about some of that economic development, community develop, the
Yes.
things that straddle, but also
Have a meeting at one.
give us
with them.
insight
Is it
into
one yet?
how they might help,
Feels like it.
funds we haven't asked for. You know, we could have a broader conversation with the right person.
That's a good point. They can, what ROI can tell us is how have the other county EDCs in the 10, 11 county region interacted with ROI to achieve more
I think-
successful results.
I think
That-
what-
When would you like to do this?
I think what I'm hearing from you is you don't want a traditional EDC for Brown County, you want some kind of hybrid.
Also
model,
benefits us
right?
exclusively, 150%.
I agree.
Not some other model that doesn't
Okay.
apply to us.
Stop,
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
When would you like to do this? I will have Julie Havik, who is the head of ROI for the Uplands. I have a meeting with her in about 2 hours.
I think we should dedicate the next meeting to that conversation,
Okay.
Okay.
When
Which
is the,
conversation?
to the broader conversation
EDC.
of what's out there, what best practices are they seeing, what
What can we
funding
take
mechanism
advantage
have we
of?
just never gotten because we didn't ask for, not positioned for it, just
Broad conversation.
I know, that's why I say the whole meeting on
Public ROI.
Because the cost of not having that conversation as soon as we can is going down multiple wrong paths and have to back up.
Exactly.
So 2 weeks from today is July 9th.
I mean,
Yep.
Yep.
I'll be here.
No, I won't be here.
Unless my baby is being born.
I was wondering when it was due.
I will not be
July
here.
7th.
I'd have to be,
Five days,
I'm
I'll share
gone
birthday.
until, the 13th of July.
9 to,
When do you leave?
9 to
Lynn?
10:30.
When do you leave?
Tomorrow.
Until the 13th?
That's right.
That's a long time, I don't think we should wait.
Do you need to be here?
You phone in?
Well, I mean, the thing is that, I mean, if, yeah, you're the one who's gonna secure the speaker.
I don't, I mean, I think you can phone in, or I can help you with her, but.
Well, I need any help with her. I'm gonna see her in about 2
Yeah,
hours.
hopefully she's feeling better.
It's just what you do.
So July 9th.
July 9th.
Okay,
9 to 10:30.
Is that okay, with you, Lynn?
it's fine with me. I mean, you know.
Just prepare.
Can we have an alternate if this person is not?
I mean, she may not
That's
be.
good.
Yeah, if she can't, then we'll have to shift the meeting.
So
Yeah.
John,
Is there
let's talk more about, we need it, that was
This is the
very
gal that
broad.
we would do business with.
Okay.
I think we need, I think we don't want this the whole meeting, this can't, we got other things we gotta hash out, right? So we'll give her 20, 30.
What do you want, what do you,
No.
You can't have that conversation.
what do you want the basis of the next meeting to even be?
Right, well, that's what I'm trying to get down to in a reasonable time, because we have other things we have to do, it's not just all this.
Well, you
I
need
think
this.
we need to give her, in advance of the meeting, a summary of who we are,
And ask her how much time she needs.
broad brush what we hope to do, and then have her come in prepared to tell us and respond to questions on how they can help, how they can't, what best practices they've seen in other counties. They may have ideas on other funders, projects that are best in class examples. of-
That's the whole meeting.
We just need
That is.
That is-
That's okay.
That's gonna give us the plan,
No,
it's gonna set
we're-
it.
But we need to equip her ahead of the meeting to know what she's walking into.
They're also, and Julie specifically is helping us on the regional economic development
I mean, Alice
project.
talks to.
She's a great resource. She,
So I think that's part of it.
When she comes in and talks, I don't want the, 20-minute sales brochure. I want 2 hours of operation.
You want to be a last question.
That's what I'm trying
I
to
want
get.
to know nuts and bolts, not just the.
Just take a meeting and do it. You're trying to organize. You need this information. You need this information.
What's the backup
Yeah,
date
we need
if
to
this
direct
person's
her.
not available?
When's the next date if she can't come on the night?
She won't be able to realize the doors anyway.
I thought you were getting a different speaker.
No,
If that's the
he said
case.
that this is the person we want.
This is the one you're gonna do business with.
You know what, we'll know in 2 hours, right?
Yeah,
But
let's.
everybody's here.
I would say that we probably would need to go the day before, so if she's available July 8th or 9th, because then you're into the CVC meeting on the 10th.
That works.
I'm not available after the night.
Well, let's go 9th primarily, shoot for the 9th, and the 8th is our secondary standby.
The
And then we get into tertiary standbys.
The other critical piece I think we've got is this investment plan, and which to me is really the core of this group's work is what specifically are we, over 20 years, wanting to recommend to the CVC and the county council happens with these funds. Like, if we're not talking about that every meeting, to me, it's, back to your point, is what's our job? What is our specific role? And that is our specific role. My understanding from the council, that is what we need to help with, is an investment plan, specifics.
Also, to what he said though, we need to get this EDC ROI thing taken care of first, because that determines which branch we take at this next vote. If we take the wrong
Did the
fork, then we
APC
gotta come
recommend
back to.
the county comprehensive plan last night? Okay.
So I think we've got that's our that's our charge.
Somebody
and
texted me, so that's.
if we're all on the same page here, is this investment plan. Like, we're dealing with money and a recommendation to Kevin and the council. And so this ROI thing, I mean, what I hope they tell us is that things are about to change dramatically for Brown County, and we are gonna start receiving major funding if we do these things. But if that is not the case, I'm not gonna waste a minute on it, because we're not gonna chase grant funds with these dollars. We do not need to be steered down these paths that have not been very fruitful in the past. I'm a little leery of putting all of our eggs in one basket, like this is gonna steer our investment plan. I don't think it's gonna happen. I mean, hopefully they can kind of like, hey, we've got millions of dollars all of a sudden.
That's
I don't think
one
it's gonna happen.
component of informed decision.
Yeah.
It's not the whole
It's
answer.
one of many directions.
Well,
Yeah.
That's what I said, there's multiple of us on here. Do we all feel it's important? I mean, I know that, you know, you can't speak for all of us. I mean, none of it. I'm not gonna speak for everybody.
I say it's important.
Are we done?
Yeah.
Because I want to introduce Dan.
Oh,
This is Dan Hart.
This is Dan.
I was saying, we have a lake coming.
Oh, boy.
How do you do?
There he is. Let's
Did
get
you
him.
hear he was bragging about you earlier? and
No.
just-
Let's get him. Well, we've got 3.2 million in projects for you to go ahead and oversee, and.
We can do that. I got some ideas already.
Do you? Oh, boy. We don't need any more of those. No.
So just Dan, this particular committee, we had